Hello, I'm Kyla Maki, creator of the Reclaim Your Life Transformational Program and KylaMaki.com. And welcome to my vlog, a place where every week I cover topics intended to help women with inflammatory bowel disease move past the stress of their illness and reclaim their life so they can feel more joy, fulfillment, and purpose, all while strengthening their bodies and feeling healthier. So in this week's video, I have part 2 of my interview with Annabel Fisher. If you missed part 1, you can go to my YouTube page or my website and catch it there. So Annabel is my EFT coach, my mentor, good friend, and a real light in my life. She's also a no-fluff intuitive breakthrough coach, self-care crusader, and authentic speaker. Annabel helps soul-driven change makers and light workers conquer overwhelm, comparisons, perfectionism, and exhaustion so they can force less, flow more, and make their one precious life count every day. She is the author of The Healing Game, Transforming Chronic Illness Using EFT, and has helped thousands of chronically ill clients from around the world since 2004. In August 2015, Annabel was diagnosed with stage 4 ovarian cancer. She wasn't expected to live, and her oncologist and surgeon have called her a miracle. Thriving through a diagnosis of recurrent cancer, Annabel has become skilled at surrendering to the unknown, living in the present, and mastering the art of doing nothing. She offers Brave, a group program empowering women to listen to and follow their soul's calling while nurturing themselves and making their one precious life count every single day. So here it is, part 2 of my interview with Annabel. So Annabel, as you mentioned, you wrote this wonderful book, The Healing Game.
There it is, yes.
I
love the fact you've got a Post-it note in there, Kyla. Excellent. That shows you've read it.
Yeah, exactly. I have. And I think, it's such a comprehensive book for using EFT for healing with chronic illness. And I highly recommend everyone get it and use it. And it's all so useful for understanding the triggers of illness and healing the emotional elements. You have some great questions in there that I was looking at it a couple nights ago, just sort of making some notes of what I wanted to ask or whatever. And there's a couple in there that sometimes still ask myself is like, what do I get out of being ill, or what am I getting out of this situation right now? And for me, I realized also using my illness as a boundary setter. And I realized it's like, oh yeah, I totally, like how do you, so that was just sort of interesting that there's some really great questions and things that really make you think in the book. Can you tell us a little bit about the book and what you hope people get from it?
Yeah, thank you. I think that there are questions in there, and there are exercises and some visualizations. And the idea behind the book is it's great if the person has a knowledge of EFT. It's okay if they don't, because I walk them through. But I think really the main purpose for me was twofold, Kyla. It was in part, as we've already discussed, for the reader to be able to identify what may well have triggered the illness. Mm-hmm. So if we read a question, what was it? What do you get out of being ill?
Yeah, or do I get anything out of being ill? And I remember you asked me that question when we first started working together, and it was like, oh, that's an interesting question.
Yeah, and I mean, it a little out of context like that, it sounds quite harsh, because if anybody's feeling really awful and they're watching this, they think, oh, great, well, I get nothing out of it. How dare you?
Yeah.
Because, of course, the conscious mind would argue that. Nobody, I always maintain, nobody wants to be ill. Mm-hmm. I mean, I certainly didn't want to undergo an 11-hour surgery and all the effects of chemo for several years now. I mean, nobody would want what goes on in somebody's life when they're very ill. But I think it's important if we have some emotional intelligence around it, and we can identify factors that may have contributed to it. So that's the one part of the triggers, which a part of the book is on. And then the other part is, and it kind of flips into what you were saying as well, is more of what I've always called the downside of wellness. Yeah. So what do we get from being ill? as in if the illness is often, well, you use the word, a boundary setter in itself. Like I know there are things I can't do at the moment, and everybody knows that, so they probably won't push me. Because I can't, for example, go for a hike, or I couldn't just jump on a plane and visit somebody. I mean, my life now takes a little more preparation and planning. And that in itself, for an introvert, highly sensitive like me, is wonderful. Great. Nobody's going to push me to do anything now. Hooray. I can, if I want to, just stay at home in my lovely sit in my garden with my cat and our chickens and my husband and have a really reclusive, lovely life. So there's something to be gained potentially from the illness. To give you some examples, Kyla, over the years, I mean, clients have said to me things like, I'm not expected to do family gatherings, or a grandparent might say, I no longer need to look after the grandkids because my daughter goes to work every day, because that would be considered too much for me. So I don't have to do that. Good, I've got my life back. Many people have shared over the years that the illness gives them time for themselves, like they can dive deep into their spiritual reading books if they choose, or do hobbies that give them joy, that maybe society might think, oh, is that how you're spending your day? But with the caveat of, no, she's sick. Oh, okay, well, that's all right then.
Yeah, exactly.
And so it's a great boundary setter like that. Oh, I don't have to do anything or be anything. I can just be the sick person. And again, these sorts of thoughts, it would be highly unlikely if they're conscious. I'm not suggesting people are celebrating that they're sick, but it kind of gets people off our backs, potentially. And so, yes, this need for our own downtime. I mean, I've heard that consistently from people over the years about I'm concerned as I'm recovering, the rituals I've created in my life will go out the window because life will get busy, or I'll start working full time or whatever it is, and I won't have that time for me. So there can be a lot of upsides, as I call it, to illness. As well, for people who perhaps have been lonely or felt unsupported in their family or in society, illness can be a great gatherer. I mean, again, it can be a great repellent, if that's a word too, because I mean, many people I've worked with over the years have claimed they've lost friends, or they feel disconnected. I totally honour that and understand that. Also, it does mean the family can kind of get together and there's more attention on that person. So if we start to look at it like that, those are more emotional triggers of why it serves us to be in this place of illness. So the book sort of is in part about the triggers that cause the illness, potentially emotionally based, and then also so now the person is sick and we've identified potentially why they got sick, but why aren't they getting well now? So symptoms may have reduced, mindset is changing, but still there may be something in it to stay sick. And one of the chapters in there is around purpose, Kyla, as well. I mean, if I may speak from my own experience currently, actually, I feel as though, or have felt in the last few weeks, as though I didn't have a purpose anymore. Often, I'm not suggesting I felt like this, but people may feel they've sort of been put on the shelf and that's it now. It's like, oh, I'm the sick person. What else is there, kind of thing. Most of the time, because of energy, like now, I simply, even if I wanted to, couldn't work the way I used to. 2015, I simply don't have the energy. I mean, more importantly, I don't have any desire to, but I don't have the energy to. And I started to question, like, what's the point of me not being here, but where is my role in society? now. I've sort of been, I've gone from being the author, the speaker, and the EFT expert to, I sort of have my lovely life here, but I'm not quite sure where I fit in anymore. And so I feel that finding our purpose and really what gives us that light to get out of bed in the morning. And
Exactly.
No, I'm not saying go out and save the world. That's awesome too. But let's talk about incremental steps here. So if somebody feels that they're not really sure where they fit in or what their role is now, it doesn't have to even be in society. It could be in their family unit. Like, who am I now? I have this sort of identity as somebody who's not well, but what's the point of me sort of being here? And particularly if somebody has had a lifestyle in the past that they loved and thrived on, there could be grief there too, as well. Like, now I'm not that person anymore. And like, I've had to wave goodbye to highly super driven type A Annabel, although she's still in me. So she's now she's got to a point thinking, well, hang on a minute, where am I going here? Where does this leave me? So the chapter around purpose is what does somebody really want from life? Now that could be, in my case, gardening, because summer's coming now, spending time in my garden with my chickens and my cat, and that undoubtedly gives me absolute joy. Is that enough?
Yeah.
And I'm just realizing at this point, no, it's not. But for somebody, that could be enough.
Yeah.
Or perhaps somebody feels like, I need to go out and work now, or I need to heal that friendship, or I need to travel to so-and-so. These are important things that I want to start focusing on. And that as well takes us out of the I'm ill place and gets us focusing on something else. So there's a part in there about purpose and settling too, because often I wonder, as I've inferred in the book, that sometimes illness is that wake-up call because perhaps we have settled into a lifestyle or a way of being, or a way of holding back, or a way of being small, or whatever it is. And it's just become very comfortable. So we haven't really put ourselves out in the world as we might do. And I think illness can wake us up to that too, because we have more time to reflect. We do. I mean, one of the things that illness gives us is presence. My goodness, if we're in chronic pain and distressed by symptoms, we can't be more present.
Yeah.
So I think that being in that present state of this is how I am now helps us see, like, oh, who was I before this point? And how can that serve me now? Do I want to go back to that existence? Because I certainly, I mean, when I was ill with chronic fatigue syndrome, and then I started using EFT and I understood the intricacies of the illness, I didn't want to go back to who I was before that. And I certainly don't want to go back to who I was before the cancer, because I realized that didn't serve me.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things in your book that I loved that was really great for me to realize, because, you know, with my illness, there's been times where you sort of go up and down, and then you're always sort of doing that, okay, why did this happen? What happened? And it's the concept of small t trauma versus big T trauma. Could you just sort of go into what you mean by that? Because for me, that was really good to be like, oh, okay, even though there wasn't like this big trauma, it was like this other stuff.
Yeah, often we think of trauma as something like a car accident or someone dying or hearing some horrendous news, or like some of the examples I gave earlier, like having to move or whatever it is. And so we may think, because I've heard this from clients as well, oh, but I've had a really lovely life. No one in my family has died. I can't think of a time where I was in shock. I mean, I've heard from many clients over the years, I feel very guilty because I've had such an easy life. But I think that that's an error to think that, there's nothing massive that's happened, so obviously I'm not traumatized. Because if I may, I'll share something I was discussing with my husband earlier, and he said again to me, we were joking about something, and he said, oh, well, maybe it's because I've got PTSD. And I said, well, of course you have, because of living with, not living with me, I mean, that hasn't given him PTSD, but with this situation that I'm in, and he lives it side by side with me every single day, and I have absolutely no doubt that he is traumatized. So we were talking a bit more about that. I mean, it wasn't the first time it's been brought up, but there's an example. Somebody might dismiss that and say, well, I've just done what I've had to do. I love you, and of course I'm going to be here by your side, and I'm doing what any husband would do. But that doesn't mean just because somebody's doing that they're not affected emotionally, mentally, spiritually by this, and of course then physically too. So often when we think of small t traumas, these are stressors in our lives that we may, in our resilience, want to dismiss and sort of bat away and think, oh, well, that's hardly important. I'm not suggesting Michael thought his role was unimportant, but often I'll go back to memories with clients that may have happened in kindergarten or young childhood memories. And they'll say, my goodness, I haven't thought about this in 30 years or something. And so we have to be very careful, Kyla, because say a 30-year-old is remembering an event that happened when she was 5. Well, probably in the grand scale of things, in comparison to what she's experienced throughout her life and into her 30s, that may not be hugely important. But it was for that 5-year-old. That could have been the worst thing ever. So these are small t traumas that are that we might dismiss, such as being shouted at by a parent or a school teacher, because that may have had an impact. Maybe the person felt threatened, or maybe they felt they felt small because everybody in the classroom was staring at them or something like that. But it's not to be dismissed, because at that time it was hugely important to the child. And the crucial thing is that could then have ripple effects. And a person may have felt when they were in similar situations, they responded in the same way, perhaps felt powerless or embarrassed or humiliated or whatever it is. So the work that I do, and all the FTs do, is to identify what are the big T and what are the small T. I mean, I wouldn't say to a client, oh, this is a small T trauma, but I would do that in my head and know this is valid. This still needs to be addressed. It mustn't be dismissed, because at the time it was hugely important, or it had an effect that is still affecting you at this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that explanation, because I when I read that in the book, I was like, wow, that really makes sense, because there's sometimes where it's been like, well, nothing big's really happened. What's going on? How come my body's reacting this way? And then you realize, oh, it's been all these little things that are probably contributing to something that becomes larger.
Yes.
Absolutely. So, a question from your book that I sometimes still work on at times is, what would it take to fully accept the condition you find yourself in? Which, as we both know, that can be really hard, especially when it's something new. Or for me, when I realized my illness was really ongoing.
Yes.
Because I had gotten sick a long time ago and had like 10 years of it being good. And then when we met, it had reoccurred quite hugely. And I was like, oh, this is a lifelong thing. And that was really difficult for me. And at times I still struggle to be like, oh, this is ongoing. What advice would you give people who are struggling with a new diagnosis or realizing the realities of having a chronic one?
Yes. Sorry, can you repeat that question? The question in the book, Kyla.
Well, basically, what would it take for you to fully accept the condition you find yourself in?
Yes. So the most important thing, I think, before we start addressing that question, not your question, but the question that you read, is to show absolute compassion for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I wrote that sort of question, I'm not sort of saying, hey, pull yourself together, come on now, get on with your life. Of course not.
Yeah.
It sucks to be ill, whether somebody's ill with the flu for a few days or they've been given a chronic diagnosis or a terminal diagnosis. There's no joy in that. So for me, it's about showing ourselves compassion. And again, there's that balance between not becoming the victim or the martyr, but acknowledging this sucks. This is a horrendous place to be that I wouldn't wish on anyone. So understanding that, for example, some days that person might be tired, or she might be angry, or she might feel powerless or hopeless, whatever it is, and acknowledging that that is part, because you yourself said a little bit back about how there's sort of peaks and troughs, isn't there? There's peaks and troughs with the symptoms. There's also peaks and troughs, I think, with our emotional resilience. Mm-hmm. Like even in my situation, some days it's an absolute breeze, and honestly don't even think about it, and then other days it may consume my thoughts much of the day. Mm-hmm. So I think it's to acknowledge that this is a really crappy day for me today, and then it's not about, so I'm going to be really horrible to everybody, or I'm going to be in a reactive state. It's just like, I'm acknowledging today is tough.
Yeah.
And then coming back to what can I do in this moment that helps me feel this is a less tough day, kind of thing. And that sort of links to the question I asked as well anyway. So this is a crappy day for me. What can I do right now to make it less crappy? Yeah. So that could, like, say somebody's well enough where they're at work and they're thinking, God, today really sucks. Like I've had to go to the washroom numerous times, or my joints are really inflamed, or whatever it is. Okay, I'm just going to sit here and acknowledge that this sucks. And what can I do as this isn't to dismiss it either. Again, it's not like don't feel the feelings. This is more, what can I do now to make me feel less crappy? And that might be, actually, I need to go home from work, or that when I get home, I'm going to do so-and-so, or I'm going to speak to so-and-so. So it just, again, it's a little bit like focusing, when I was talking about purpose, focusing on something else other than today is so crappy. Again, not to dismiss it, but just how do we get out of that place to allow us to feel like, oh, goodness, my life is so much more than only feeling crappy or only being ill. Yeah. I have a friend I can speak to, or I'm going to think about the weekend when we've planned to do such and such, or whatever it is. So again, then to that acceptance of the condition, if I can then open up what I've just said to that question, I think putting that into play all the time. Because when I said to you I was given the label of chronic fatigue syndrome, that helped me enormously, because I was like, oh, thank you, I now have something to work with. Yeah. But then knowing that we've sort of been given this identity can also be very demoralizing and so forth. But I think one of the hugest things is, and this comes over time, I don't think there's anybody that could say, oh, okay, yesterday I was given this diagnosis and now I'm going to take this on. I mean, it's all a process of adjustment. But when the time is right, I think taking the concerted effort to think, this doesn't define me. Yeah. Because I do that now. I refuse to believe my cancer defines me. I know inside I'm still me. I know I can have so much fun with my friends. I can have laughs with I love working with you because we laugh a lot. It doesn't have to define how I work with clients, how I interact with friends, how I live my life with my husband. Sometimes it does get in the way, absolutely. Yeah. But I think crucially, again, it's reconnecting to what gives us joy, what what allows us to feel, well, I say joy, what allows us really to feel whatever we need to feel.
Yeah.
So often if my mind's going squirrely and I'm thinking of what ifs and some diagnoses, some symptoms may appear and I start questioning things, I would then ask the question, okay, what would I prefer to feel in this moment? And that could be any number of things. Specific, of course, to the individual. But one of my sort of values, my maxims, is to feel spacious. So often that comes up for me. Okay, this is, I'm all cluttered and it's I'm feeling limited by these what ifs and questions. So I desire to feel spacious. I desire to feel at ease in this moment. So what needs to happen?
Yeah.
And that could be any number of things, whatever that person needs. Somebody else might say, I need to feel, one thing I've heard a lot is I need to feel it's going to be all right.
Yeah.
And of course, no one has that guarantee with an illness.
No.
The doctors usually don't. The person may be in a very low place at that point and they don't know either. But maybe what's required is speaking to a friend who can just say, I'm here to listen, vent. Or I'm here to take you out for coffee and we can look at the people watch or watch the river or whatever. Whatever it is to allow that person to feel different in that space. And to go back to that statement of I need to know or I want somebody to tell me it's going to be okay or I'm going to recover. I mean, I'm sure people know deep down, but nobody can give them that answer.
Yeah.
But just to be at ease with wanting that answer too.
Yeah.
That's okay to want that answer. Why can't somebody just tell me I'm going to heal? Like, my God, I've said that enough times to the universe in the last few years. I want to know. Well, nobody can tell me that. But maybe I can do something in that moment that helps me know I'm okay. I may not be 100% healed in that moment, but I'm okay.
Yeah.
And often, Kyla, things that make us feel okay are things that are familiar, like hearing a friend's voice or drinking a cup of our favorite tea or stroking the pet or whatever it is. It doesn't have to be massive. I'm not telling your audience to go out and do massive things here. These are all very tangible, manageable things you can chunk down and do immediately. So these are little tips on how to accept the condition. And that doesn't mean as well, while I think of it, that every day you must wake up and say, I accept this condition. I mean, that's crazy.
That you're all okay with it,
Yes, that's right. Because how could somebody be okay with something that's chronic and debilitating? But to accept it on the whole. Because to use your example, you are a woman who has created a life around this. And that doesn't mean it's easy, but you have done that, and you travel with your husband and you spend time with friends and family. And it doesn't have to limit us and squeeze us into some small box so that we feel completely hopeless.
Yeah. I was really, really interesting article today about a woman who was talking about her chronic illness, and she said sometimes to feel self-love is you have to be okay with feeling that rage of being like, I hate right now that my body is doing this, or even I hate my body, because it can be, it's like, we've tapped on it before, feeling betrayed by your body. So I think, definitely dealing with what you're feeling in that and being okay with that. And then I love the idea of the purpose of having something more than just your illness, whether it is going out and feeding the chickens or volunteering somewhere or whatever it may be, that is your purpose, but having something more than just, your diagnosis.
Yes, because there is more than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the worry is that it can be all-consuming.
Yeah.
And especially when someone is only just diagnosed. I was talking to a dear friend about this in the fall last year because her father-in-law was diagnosed with cancer. So I was talking to her about the immediacy of everything, and I'm sure it's the same with any condition. There's a lot, there can be tests and hospital visits and scans, and everything's quite fast paced because it's crisis mode.
Yeah.
But that usually eases off. And so after a period of time, however long that takes, a new normal is created. Yeah. Is it the same as the life before the diagnosis? No, and probably it won't be. But it then eases into the next phase, which is how am I now going to sort of reestablish my life alongside this diagnosis? And I think that's where the acceptance comes in too. And accepting, as you said, that some days I'm going to feel very angry. Some days I'm going to feel very sad. Some days I'll be grieving. Some days will be pretty good. And accepting it all as part of being with this condition.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Annabel, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I so appreciate it. You know, I love you so much, Annabel. You're one of my favorite people.
Oh, thank you, Kyla. And likewise.
If people want to find out more about what you do, what you're all about, where can they find you?
Yes, my website is annabelfisher.com. So that's easy. ANNABELFISHER.com. And I have a group on Facebook called the Effortless Success Movement, which is what I'm all about, taking life effortlessly.
I love
it. And of course my book, thank you, Kyla, which you have
Absolutely.
shown.
Go get this
very
book.
Good. Yes, Amazon, Canada, lots of countries, US, UK, lots of European ones. So it's there, it's available.
And I will post some links for people to be able to find you. So if they want to check you out, then they can buy your book and find out all about your fabulousness.
Thank you. I would love that.
All right. Thank you so much, Annabel.
Oh, you're welcome, my love. Bye, Kyla.
Bye. Take care. Okay, everyone, so that was part 2 of my interview with Annabel Fisher. Again, if you missed part 1, go to my website at kylamaki.com to check it out there, or at my YouTube page. If you like this video, please like it, and please share it with anyone you think that might enjoy it. To never miss out on any exclusive content that I only share in email, please go to my website, again, kylamaki.com, to sign up for my newsletter. Thank you so much for watching, and keep on pursuing your desires, because true health comes from our passion, growth, love, and joy. Thanks again, and I'll see you next week.